So, Ray. I still can't get over Saturday. That turnout was just amazing Saturday.
Well, people are coming to their senses.
Coming to their senses. Yeah, it's time to get back out there and mingle and network.
So I heard the number 96. Was it 96 people?
Yeah, when you get up to that many, I mean, I think what we need to do is go buy a clicker. But when you get up to that many, it's really hard to get an accurate count. So I mean, it could have been 98, it could have been 92, but it was in the 90s, and it was packed full. And we're gonna have to next month. We're gonna have to take the tables out and just have chairs and so you fit more people in. Because it's definitely, the word's getting out, and everybody that I've talked to these past few days, they're still like raving about it. That was just amazing. All the panelists, that was their favorite part, was the panelists.
And I thought Becky did a good job getting the meeting going, and the door prizes were good. I think everything was pretty good. Are you going to introduce us and tell people what we're doing?
Yeah, but one more comment before I do that. Not only did it flow, it flowed really good, and we also, the elements of it, we had the right amount of elements, and everybody loved each part of it. But yeah, let me go ahead and kick us off. Welcome everybody. This is our weekly live training that we do tonight. It's yours truly, James Haney and Ray Sasser. We're gonna put Ray Sasser on the seat tonight. So if you could leave a comment, let us know where you're tuning in from, say hello, and share this video with your friends, because I personally get a joy of putting Ray on the hot seat. So you're in for a treat tonight.
By the way, did we share with everybody our mastermind group meeting that we went to? I guess we did that. We did a live stream while we were there.
Yeah, last week we were there in Florida with our mastermind group, and we did it from there, and we were able to talk about it. We went through that chart that Vina made. So we should have that up and out there very soon. But tonight,
one thing that I think, by the way, I hope I'm not stepping on your feet, but one of the things that we brought back with us is that group, it's 14 different RIAs across the country, are finding the best speakers and the most knowledgeable people on different topics in that group. And we'll be basically doing a class. I think it's 40 or 50 bucks generally, sometimes a little bit more, but we'll be doing a class every other Saturday, getting some of the smartest people in the country talking about real estate investing. In fact, I think I'll be one of the guys back at the end of March. I'll be talking on negotiation. That'll be like 4 hours, but I think it's going to be a pretty good lineup of different people on different topics.
Yeah, and guys, listen, and this is not a sales pitch. This is speaking from experience. You really got to go to Ray's negotiating class, because let me tell you, he negotiates with us every day, and he's a negotiator.
I'm using all kinds of psychological warfare on everybody. Everything is nothing's off limits.
So just make sure that if you do, and when you do, bring a pen and paper and take some notes. So let's go ahead and get started for tonight. So we've been talking about our meeting that we had this past Saturday, and we're just really excited about it. If you were there, also leave us a comment. Let us know that you were there and what you thought of it. But for one, we had a full room, and there was probably about 15 or 20 people standing in the back of the room because we were out of chairs. So what we're going to do tonight is Ray interviewed 4 spectacular speakers and investors, and they're super successful, and he interviewed them. Well, and he basically asked them one question to get the conversation started. Well, tonight, I'm going to ask the question to Ray that he was asking. So he's going to be on the hot seat. And so let me set up the scene. So Ray is very successful. He's been in the business a very long time. He's got lots of knowledge up here. He's got lots of resources, lots of, just anything you can
Lots of
imagine.
mistakes. Don't forget, I made more mistakes than probably most people on the call.
Yeah, lots of experience where he's learned some stuff in the classroom, and he's also learned stuff at the old school Hard Knocks.
Yeah, seminars. All those are seminars. We want to avoid the expensive seminar.
So what the question is, and let me finish setting the scene and get there. Ray, today you wake up and all of that stuff that you have, all your connections, all your resources, all your capital, all of that stuff, you don't have that. The only thing you have to work with is your knowledge up here, okay, and your experience. How would you start over today and in the next 2 years be financially free again?
Well,
that is the question.
So just, you want me to throw some thoughts out there?
Yeah, you're on the hot seat.
Well, I think the first thing I would do is I would look at wherever y'all threw me, and hopefully I have some moving money. I have operating money, right? In other words, living money.
Yeah. So I did a bad job setting that up. So you do have, you live in a studio apartment, and you have a cell phone, you have a computer, you have basic working and living expenses covered. Okay, you do have that. So you got to use that and your knowledge to become financially free in the next 2 years.
So yeah, and I think like in the panel, I think we were asking like, could you make in the next couple years make $1 million in either net worth or cash in the bank, or a combination thereof? Tim Mai asked that question a while back, and I gave that a lot of thought at that time. And then when we were doing that panel, I was kind of listening to the answers and then thinking, how did those answers kind of meet with what I would do? And I think the first thing I'd do, as a true entrepreneur, we want to make the rules work for us every way we can. We want to get every advantage. So the first thing I would do is I would look at wherever you put me, and if it's not a growing area, I'd buy a bus ticket and go to a growing area. So definitely I want the market. I want people not to be leaving the market. I want people coming into the market. And then, because that's part of the math I would use, if I could get into a growing market, and in fact, Jimmy Napier, people would always say, oh, you can't do that here. Like in California, they'd say you can't do things. Right now, the Northeast, the population of the Northeast of the country is getting smaller and smaller. People are moving out. And what that happens, that creates a supply of houses, which means the demand is going to go down. And then a lot of times in the Northeast, the taxes and the legislative issues are really hard to deal with. And they squeeze some profit out of the deal. So Jimmy Napier said 38 years ago, maybe it's 39 now, when I first started, everybody in the room was saying, oh, you can't do that here and do that here. And in some places, it really is like having your hands tied behind your back. And Jimmy's attitude was, well, you're not a tree, you can move. And so that would be the first thing, is I want to be in an area that's going to create a lot of opportunities. And if people are leaving and the jobs are not growing and the supply is increasing, the demand's decreasing, why fight that fight? Just move. Just go somewhere hot. And where's hot? Florida and Texas. I mean, that's it. You got to be in Florida and Texas. And we're lucky we're in Houston. In Houston, Texas has got 4 huge MSAs, which is, 4 large city groupings. And that's going to be San Antonio, Houston, Austin, or Dallas. So I'm going to go somewhere hot. I'm going to go where there's a lot of action and a lot of opportunity. And I might go to a little bit smaller market where it's not near as hot. There's nothing wrong with being a big fish in a small pond. So I kind of like that idea too. If you look at Austin and Dallas, San Antonio area, it's just exploding outward. And so if you're in those fringes, then your opportunities are going to be better. And you look at what's happening in Houston, and we started out with 610. Now everybody and his brother wants to buy a 610, and most people can't buy. And then they made a circle around that called Beltway 8. And now everything inside Beltway 8 is really hot. And they're virtually finished with 99, which is loops around Beltway 8. So we got 3 rings going around Houston. And so I'm going to be around 99. I'm going to be looking at 99. I'm going to be looking for those opportunities. I'm going to be looking for those properties where there's going to be strong demand now, or where the prices have risen a lot higher and a lot faster than anybody even understands. And I'm going to go for those areas. So those are the kinds of things. And of course, my expertise is small apartments and single family houses. So definitely going to do that. I'm going to stay with that. You know,
So,
we just
Ray, I'm going to interrupt you. Question way off topic, but you mentioned it, 610, Beltway 8, 99. Do you think that maybe in the next 15 years or 20 years, possibly, there could be another one outside of 99?
No. I mean, you get much further out. What happened, I remember when I first got out of the service and I moved to Houston, there was a pretty popular road called 1960, and you could go to downtown Conroe, go due north, and it's probably, I'm going to guess, about 30 miles, maybe 25 miles. There were probably 3 lots, 3 properties, 3 little areas where there were buildings on the side of the road. Now I don't even think there's 3 empty lots between those 2 points and over that 25-mile stretch. And that's happened in the last, 35 years that I've lived in Houston. And it's those values are going through the roof. Houses that we were getting for $30,000 and $40,000 a few years back, we just put one on the market the other day, and I don't even, in fact, I don't know how many offers we've had. And our attitude, the market is so hot. We listed it for 180. We've already had above price offers. And I'm not even going to look at the offers for 4 or 5 days. Really, I'm just going to let them accumulate. And then we're going to go through them, see what they look like, eliminate the ones that aren't any good, or we're just going to ask for highest and best offer and get everybody to resubmit that's interested. So the market's, it's never been this hot before. And now with the low cost of money, and hopefully we can ride that out and take some opportunities, we're in a place like we've never been before. So that's what I would be looking for. If you just threw me in the middle of nowhere, first of all, I'm not going to take that sitting down. I'm going to go to a place where the supply is diminishing and getting smaller and not growing. And so I might move pretty quick. Now there's areas are going to do 3 things. They're either going to go up in value, or they're going to go down in value, or they're going to be pretty static. Right now, it's hard to see anything being static. It's either going up in value or going down in value.
So the first thing you said is you want to get to an area that is growing or is in the path of progress.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, because I think a lot of people don't know what they're sitting on, or now is the time to really start thinking about developing things. As the inventory minimizes. This happened prior to 2007. I remember having very similar thoughts. It's just hard to get a deal. It was hard to get a deal, and it's like at some point you got to go out and make your own deals. You got to produce or create your own deal. You got to make something that wasn't there before. You've got to either add square footage, or you got to tear it down, you got to change it, or you just got to develop something. So I wouldn't be spending 100% of my time looking for existing deals. I'd probably be moving more into, if I'm trying to make that money fast, I'd probably be moving more into some land stuff, and then also JVing with people and just trying to come up with partnerships. You can go through a neighborhood. There's so many ways to generate leads, but one of the best ways is to get the leads that nobody knows about, because they're not on the market. And the good thing about real estate, especially in real estate where there's property taxes, decent amount of property taxes. Like, for example, our property taxes in Texas is typically about 2.5% to 3%. Sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower. Well, that's an advantage to investors, because investors can't just sit on a property. It has to perform. So I would really have my eyes open to things that are not performing, and then I would go and try to make creative deals. And that might be going through just knocking on doors in neighborhoods and just see where the problems are. This property that we just got in that we looked at a couple of weeks ago that we just bought, we just talked to the people that there was a change in their life. They were the lady's husband had died a few years ago. Her children were grown. She didn't need a 2,800 square foot house for her, and so her needs changed. And what happens with houses, very often, is people don't make upgrades, and so they don't naturally want to list it and have a bunch of people tramping through the property. So then they'll reach out to somebody they know that buys houses. In this case, they knew us, and they said, "Are you interested in buying the house?" And boom, next thing you know, we've got the deal. So in that one deal, I mean, if you look at the math on that deal, the net on that deal is probably going to be, by the time we upgrade it, and I think we did that as a case study, but we're expecting the net on that to be about 75 if we do a low end rehab flip. If we do a high end rehab flip, it's probably going to be about 125 or 135. So, and we've decided to do the middle of the road just because of the amount of time that it takes to do it. But if I was being thrown out in the middle of nowhere, then I need two things really. I mean, because you said I have the knowledge, right? And what was our acronym we came up with? It was CALM.
Calm.
Yeah, it's knowledge, attitude, leads, and money. So assuming I've got the knowledge, which I think I do, and then I've got the right attitude, I think, because I believe that I can do this. And that's probably, when we say attitude, that's probably the first thing and most important thing that comes to mind. Is people don't believe they can get results. And the first person that says, "Oh, you can't do that," they listen to them. Instead of say, "The hell with you, I'm going to do this no matter what." And if they got that attitude, that's what I mean by attitude. You got to have that attitude. James, you've been around me when people told me I couldn't do things. You know how I don't respond too good to that. And I don't think any successful person, any endeavor, is just going to take no on face value. So
not only do you not react well to that, it's almost like more motivation.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
like,
And yeah, exactly. And it's not like I want to throw it in your face. It's just like, hey, no, that's good. I'm glad everybody can't do it, because that gives me a competitive advantage. And we just got to, and that's why we want to hang out with other people that are overcoming things. And that panel we had up there, every one of those 4 guys that were up there, they don't take no for an answer. If you tell them no, they're saying, "Okay, what do I got to change to get past this?" You know, by the way, we had AG up there, we had Tom, we had Chewy, and who was the 4th guy we had
Steve.
up there?
Steve.
Oh yeah, we had Steve Dancer up there. All those guys have been very, very active, and not a one of them know how to take no for an answer. So if you got the knowledge and you got the attitude, then we got to figure out how to get the leads and the money. The money, it turns out, for people with the right attitude, the money actually is the easiest part. The key with the money is to be smart about it, because the better you are at getting money, the more money you make, right? Because if you have to give away more of the deal or more of the profit to make it work, well, then you got to work twice as hard, or you got to work 20% harder just to recover that 20%. So we definitely want to be good at getting money. We want to be good at getting money, understanding money. Sometimes we can't call the shots with the money, but the more you know, the more more you can get the outcome that you want. So the money's easy. And I mean, hard money's out there, long-term money, short-term money, everything's out there money-wise. I would definitely join the local RIA, the RIA that's got the real investors in it. Not one of these things where it's just everybody's never done a deal kind of thing, where there's real people that do deals all the time. Our Alamo RIA, like San Antonio, I mean, I think half the membership they're like that. They're much more experienced. They're more mature. And a lot of those guys will partners with you on things. So I would be a member of that RIA, because that RIA, we're gonna nurture it and get leads out of that RIA, and we'll get potential private money deals and JVs out of that deal. If I had to wholesale, I wouldn't hesitate to wholesale deals if I didn't have real good control of the money. And who's to say, if you told me in a place I haven't been before, maybe I can't get real good control, but I would wholesale deals. And then the question, as a last resort, but I'd still wholesale them if that was the only way to do it. But why wholesale when we can make 5 to 7 times as much money not wholesaling? So we would come up with some creative deals. And then I would be in front of people, potential sellers, just talking just as much as I possibly could. And other wholesalers. Because wholesalers, a lot of times they got deals that need some adjusting, and we can make them work. So if a deal doesn't make sense with a wholesaler at first, just let them know that you're available. One thing I learned just by doing, and Chewy said it in that meeting. He said, "Don't give me the deals everybody wants. Give me the deal nobody wants." And that's the right attitude, because if you go with a wholesaler and the people flake out and they don't want it, or they change their mind, then you got to figure out how to come in and make that deal work. And if you can figure out how to make the deals work that other people can't, you're going to do a lot more deals.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting that he said that that's what he focuses on. The deals that everybody runs away from or they can't make work, those are the ones that he goes after.
Yeah, he nailed it. And that's exactly right. I couldn't agree more.
But I was going to ask you a couple minutes ago, and you started to allude to it, and I thought you were going to get there, but and I thought you were reading my mind. But when you first started, your first 10 or 15 years, you were, doing a lot of rehabbing and flipping and everything. You were to start over, like we're talking about this scene. How would that look different over the next couple of years versus when you first started? How would you use your knowledge and experience, and how would it be different?
Well, when we first started, my brother and I were partners. We're still partners on a lot of stuff, but we were partners, and I had a full-time job. He had a full-time job. So we were just doing deals. Our very first deal, we held on to it for over almost 30 years. So we didn't need the income. With the scenario that you're giving, I don't need the income right away. I guess there is going to be some sort of time limit on it, but I would avoid flipping as much as possible. But if you said, look, you got 6 months and then you got to support yourself, then I probably would be doing some flipping in there. I'd be some wholesaling or some flipping. I would really, really control my expenses. If you get on a video and show me a Bentley that you're driving, in my opinion, unless you're worth about $25 or $30 million, you shouldn't be driving a Bentley. Maybe my numbers are wrong, but most of these guys are driving Bentleys. They got 3 or 4 good paychecks, or the market, they're going through the up part of cycle of a market. But that money they spend on that Bentley, they'll be selling that for pennies when the market crashes. And in my opinion, you need that money is a soldier. It's your army. And you need every bit of that money that you can afford to keep in the deals. Keep them in the deals working for you. And I'm all for using other people's money. In fact, that conversation came up. I couldn't disagree with that either. We definitely want to use other people's money, but you still are going to need money. Like if you're moving, let's say you're in a transaction and there's $200,000 in that transaction. Whoever's putting that money up typically is going to want you to have some money in the skin in the game. And so you might need $10 or $20 or $25,000 to move that money around. Or you may have to leave that money in a deal for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. And so if you have to use $15,000 or $20,000 and you don't have that money, then you have to bring a partner in a lot of times. So not only do you have to bring a lender in, you have to bring a partner. In fact, there's a name for that. And a lot of I try to discourage our RIA members from doing this. There's a thing called gap funding where somebody will go borrow money from a lender, but they won't have quite enough. And so they'll borrow money from another person for the gap funding. They'll either borrow it from them or they'll JV with them. So when you do that, you're giving up pieces of the potential, the maximum potential value of that deal, because you're either bringing in a partner or you're paying cost on that money, a high cost for that money. So we never know how any single deal is going to go down, but the less that you have to bring other people into the deal, the better. Now, if you get good private lenders and you can make these deals work and the cash flows work, that's fine. But what if the cash flow is not right? Because we never know how the deal is going to end up. So we have to structure that deal the best we can. And if you've got some liquid money, you can usually move in and out of deals. Now, one thing happens with a sub-2, commonly with a sub-2, which we're taking over existing financing. That's what a sub-2 is. So we're taking over existing financing. You might be short 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, and you might not be able to bring a lender in. And what do you do on a deal like that? The only way you can bring a lender in oftentimes is get a partner. And now you've given up half the deal or a third of the deal or whatever you can negotiate. And that's why negotiating is so important too, because we don't want to give up half a deal if we can only give up 25% of the deal. And I'm not against partnering. I think being partners with people and learning how to partner is a really good way to go, as long as the people are bringing the right stuff to the table. Every partnership's got to have the right ingredients. It's like a recipe for cornbread. It's not going to be cornbread if you don't add the right stuff to it. And if you don't have the right ingredients, right, you don't have the right makeup of the partners and the characteristics of those partners, you're not going to end up with what you're expecting. You're going to end up with a problem. And I've done a lot of partnerships, and a lot of them have gone bad. So just got to really, really be careful how we put these partnerships together.
So we did have a question come in, which, guys, if you're watching this and you have a question about what we're talking about, leave it in the comments, and our producer, Hal, he will get that to us and make sure that if there's time, we can address it, or we can address it offline. But we did have a question from one of our students, Matt. He was asking, how do you, and I'm going to add to that because there's a little bit more to that, but the question is, you mentioned about working with wholesalers a few minutes ago. How do you make a counter offer to a wholesaler? That was the question. My addition to that is, how do you make a counter offer to a wholesaler without running them off or offending them or losing your chances of either getting that deal or them bringing you more deals in the future?
There's it's probably a perfect way to do this, and I don't want to say what I'm doing is anywhere near perfect, but I tried to think about a negotiation where you have two people sitting across a table. It's pretty clear that they have different needs and goals, and they're adversaries. And unfortunately, that's really the way it is. And so I want to try to sit on the same side of the table as them. So when I start talking to them, and this is kind of getting into the negotiation part, but when I start talking to people, I want to treat them like they're a partner, right? Like we both have the same goals. How can we do this? Now, a hardcore wholesaler might come back and say, I don't need you. I don't care about you. Pay the money or I'm moving on. But a guy that's been in this business for any length of time, especially a wholesaler, he's had a lot of problems with deals. We just closed on a lot that we're going to put a mobile home on a couple of weeks ago. And there were two wholesalers there partnering up. I don't know. They said they work for the same company. And that, by the way, entails everything. So try to understand where that wholesaler is coming from, what the dynamic of his company is, what his structure is. And the one guy was real easy to talk to. Another guy was real hardcore. And he actually threatened us that if we didn't close on the transaction or whatever, and that he wouldn't give our money back, but he couldn't give us clear title. Or he thought title was clear, but he didn't understand what title was. So there are some hardcore wholesalers out there. But on the other hand, if you just kind of discount the one guy that was totally unreasonable, and without me telling you everything, it's hard for you to understand that, but just take my word, hypothetically, let's say that I'm right in this. Well, the other guy was perfectly reasonable, and he was asking like, well, why does that constitute a title problem? And how do you know it's a title problem? And why, what is it that we need to do to fix it? So the one guy I can't work with because he's unreasonable and he was a jerk, and I wouldn't give him the time of day. And the thing is, he may have an opportunity to do 10 or 20 more deals with me or my sphere of influence. And because of his attitude, it's like, this guy's he's not an honest person. I didn't feel like he was honest. I didn't feel like he was acting in a reputable way. And so why would I ever do business with that guy again? Whereas the other guy, I can nurture that relationship. And I say, well, look, say his name was Mike. I say, Mike, this is why it's a title issue. Now, here's how we can fix it, right? Or, hey, I got this buddy over here, like Mansour at Transact Title. We can get him to help us hold our hand through this and show us how to fix it if I don't know how. And I say, he can step us through this. And so one person, it's like, he's not going to be in the business long. I've been around this business a long time, and people like that guy don't ever survive. They don't last. They make people do things they don't want to do or that they don't understand. And I told that guy, I said, look, if we close on this like right now, I'm going to, when it goes wrong, whether it's me or somebody else, they're going to sue everybody involved. You, Mr. Wholesaler, you're going to be sued too. Right. So why do you want to get into that? In fact, they were going through a situation like they told me, hey, we're having some legal issues right now. We're going through this. And I said, yeah, I didn't say it, but it's like, you're not treating people right. You got to treat your seller right. You got to treat your buyer right. So to get back to Matt's question, the wholesaler is your partner. He has a potential of finding you a lot of deals. If the guy's Mike, say Mike is a good guy, I would say, Mike, look, this numbers won't work for me, but this number will. This is why I'm saying this. It's just not a good fit for me. But if you can come in, let's say they're asking 100, and you say, if you can come in at 77, whatever your number is, and you're talking to the person like he's your brother or your friend, and you're exploring options together, you'd be surprised how often those deals come back to you. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to compete with people that are paying too much right now. And honestly, I don't know what too much is, but it's, it when you see it, when you run into it. And so you got to have a reason why you believe that your number or your structure for that deal is right. And then you got to talk to that person like he's your partner. And wholesalers, if you really understand how wholesalers work, yeah, they want buyers, but almost more important than buyers are having a firm commitment from somebody so that when they say they're going to buy it, they really know that person's a buyer. If you're a wholesaler, if you're a serious wholesaler, you're probably going to say, look, it's not about making the maximum amount of dollars. It's knowing that when I make a promise to that seller and a buyer comes along and says he's going to buy it, that he's actually going to do what he promises. And to a lot of wholesalers, I'm a lot more valuable than that guy that's paying $5,000 more. Because when that guy paying $5,000 more can't get that loan that he wants, then he's going to come back to me. And so if I'm talking to that wholesaler, I want to let him know I may not be a good fit for your deal now, but our relationship is important and we might be able to help each other going forward. I don't know, it's been so long since I remember since you said the question, I don't even know if that answered the question.
Talk about going down a rabbit hole. No, but we're getting lots of feedback. In fact, one of our students and other volunteers, they have a text chain that they've started now that whenever we start these live trainings every week, they send out a text to each other. Hey guys, it's going on. And so I see messages popping up on my phone that they're really, digging this, that they're really loving, the things that you're bringing out here. But
Well, I think it's worthwhile to talk to people. Chewy said it right. He said it better than I ever said it. And is I want the stuff other people don't want. When that deal flakes out because somebody can't close or they don't have the money, I want them to already know in their head that I'm their backup. And that means you can't suppose that they glean that. You have to tell them. And what would that be? You'd say, look, I can close fast, I can approve the deal fast, and I can sign the contract without contingencies. And if you got a track record, then say, here's my track record, right? And so that's very, very powerful. And you want to remind the person that, because they may talk to, just imagine you're a wholesaler putting a property out there and you have 10 people interested, right? And then you have it gets down to 2 people arguing with each other who wants the deal. Well, then what happens is they pick a person, the wholesaler picks a person, and they don't close. So who are they going to go to? Maybe they'll go back to that backup person if he's still out there. But it's our job to stay in that wholesaler's ear and to stay in touch with them and keep connected with them and say, okay, did that deal ever go away? Do you have any new deals? Can you keep me on your short list? We're anxious. Tell me how I can help you be more successful.
Yeah, you always give something before you take it. It's always what I like to say. Yeah. Better to give than to receive. But I'm gonna switch gears for a minute here. Throughout the years, you've had to overcome fear, try new things of that nature. How would you use that experience when you're starting over and get through some of that fear? How would you use that? And I ask that from the perspective of, if somebody is just getting started and they might have that fear. They might, like, for example, a popular question coming out nowadays is, what if I don't have a buyer if I get a property in a contract? Okay. Well, that tells me that there's, fear there. So how would you use your knowledge and experience to overcome your fear?
I think that's a great question, James. And I don't think it's a single answer. I think that if you think about it, and I don't really know what they all would be, but I would say there's probably 4 or 5 things that could happen that could sabotage the outcome that I expect to get. And so whatever those 4 or 5 items are, you have to deal with them up front, and you have to make sure that you have confidence that your outcome is right. In other words, if I say, yes, it's yellow, I have to have confidence that that thing is yellow, right? If I'm not sure that it's yellow, I think it's green, and I'm betting on it being yellow, then I've got to be able to overcome that. So some of those things I think would be, you said buyer. So another one would be, how do I really know if I have a buyer? So what would cause a problem with having a buyer? And one of the things that would cause a problem with getting a buyer is, like, I don't have my values right, or I'm missing something important on the property, some big defect, and of course that ultimately gets back to value too, but I'm missing some pieces there. I got to have confidence that I'm writing the contract right, that if this deal doesn't go down, that I wrote the contract in such a way that I'm leaving myself wide open for litigation or a lawsuit. So the make sure that the contract's right, make sure the deal's right, make sure I'm not missing anything. And those are things that we could talk about for a long time. But for example, let me just give you an example so we use Trello on our workflows for closing retail deals, like this deal that we have in this one property you asked about. That's going to be a retail flip because it's too high. The value's too high to make it a rental, and it's not suitable for an Airbnb. So there really our only exit strategy, highest and best exit strategy, is to flip it. So when we look at flipping it, we've got to make sure we're covering all the bases. Like, do we know everything that's going to make make it a successful flip. And in our Trello, on our workflow, just on a retail deal, I think we're up to 53 steps. 53 steps that Aubrey, when we get the deal under contract on a flip, is 53 things we have to check. So that's important, because if you miss one of those or you get it wrong, you could blow your budget. You could end up exceeding the amount of time that it takes to flip the property. So there is some real reasons to have fear. Fear is probably a good thing, because it makes us spend that extra 10 minutes or 30 minutes or stay late and make sure that we're covering all our bases. So, but the worst thing you can do is not confront that fear. An example, like if you said, I can't, in your case, you said, I can't, what if I can't find a buyer? If you have confidence that you put the deal together right, if you have confidence that you're buying it at the right price, you have confidence that there's real buyers out there, it takes away a lot of that fear. And it's hard to have confidence when you don't have a lot of experience doing different things. So you have to rely on other people's experience. To me, I think that helped me more than anything else, just being around knowledgeable people who were real active in this business, finding out where they're at and hang out with them, because then you can use them as a sounding board. And I wouldn't ask, for example, if a realtor was bringing me a property, and there's nothing wrong with buying a deal off of a realtor or them being your lead source. But if there's some way that they're going to get a direct benefit from providing me that property, then I want, in other words, I got a horse in the race. So I want to make sure that I have some other independent way to verify what they're telling me. And for example, it's not unusual for somebody to say, "Hey, Mr. Realtor, tell me the after repair value, the ARV." Well, if they're going to make a commission, or there's some way that they're going to get a benefit in that answer, well, then you definitely can't rely on their judgment, because they may be biased by the outcome. They may be getting a $5,000, $10,000 commission. Same with a wholesaler. So if they got a horse in the race, you're going to have to figure out independently what the issues are, and you have to know. You have to have some sense of what they're going to be. And by the way, there are so many ways to be blindsided. I can't imagine somebody just starting out on their own and thinking that they can just go and say yes to a deal and not run it by one or two or three people who have tons of experience. I almost bought we bought a property outside of a rural area outside of a big city. And what we didn't realize is this little community, it was a little city, had condemned every single property between our property and the water. The properties weren't turned down, but there was a flooding in the area, and they went in and condemned every single property, and they didn't condemn ours. It was just pure luck that they didn't condemn it. I didn't check with the city to make sure that it wasn't condemned, because at that time, when we did that 20 years ago, I didn't know that I needed to worry about that. Well, now I know I need to worry about that. So if I were writing a contract, I would definitely have a contingency period in there. And then, I know you had heard earlier that I said without a contingency, but I will put contingency to title and contingency to me having the right to rebuild the property, for example. Definitely have to have those contingencies in there. So I would put those in there. And there's a couple other things we do to the contract to protect ourselves. But then I would check those things out. I would write the contract, and then I would check those things out. So your fear is healthy. Fear is what makes you ask questions. But you want to be around people that are doing what you want to do, to have a lot of experience, because they're going to know if you're in trouble, or if you're in a problem area, or you're in a danger zone. And just make sure they don't have a horse in the race. Make sure they have your best interest at heart, and then rely on it. And if you break this down to a real basic thing, let's say ARV is, for the numbers to work, the ARV has to be 180,000. Then you work backwards on those numbers, and you know whether or not those numbers make sense. And if you have confidence that, let's say you're going to flip it, hypothetically, you're going to flip it, and it's 20,000 in repairs, Well, by the time you get the repairs, your holding costs, your closing costs, your sales costs, and you factor all that in, now we know what our acquisition price should be. So we work backwards, we figure that out. So if I can have total confidence that ARV is right, after repair value, now I have confidence. And as long as I know I can have a buyer, then, and there's ways we measure that. We measure, like, what is the market telling us about ready, willing, able buyers? Are they out there? We can measure that. And if I can't measure it, I don't do that deal. And Richard and I, Richard helping us with the RIA and taking on a lot of responsibility for him, and I had a deal that we were working on out of town, and there were no buyers. The deal was good. I mean, if I lived in that little town, I could have made it work. I know, because we proved the rent was good, but it was such a small little community. There was no buyers in that community, and it was too far away from anybody else to want to take it. So it's like, you got to look at all the different things that can blindside you. So fear is good. There's nothing wrong with fear, but it shouldn't paralyze you. It's where fear paralyzes you that you can't allow that to happen. If there's a factor in this calculation that you can't figure it out, you have to overcome that. You have to figure it out. And that's the power of the RIA. That's the power of coaching. All those things are there. Why learn how to do your first deal when you have no experience by yourself? You can't, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, you just, you have a really good chance of spinning your wheels and not getting anywhere, but getting frustrated and throwing your arms up and saying, I'm done with this. I want to throw the opportunity out there again. I mentioned a few minutes ago, if you got any questions for us, leave a question. We're about to wrap up, so we do have a few minutes left to get your last minute questions in there. But I did want to touch on something that you said, Ray, and I want to put it in a little bit different perspective. Your buddy, Mr. Tom, he was on the panel. He actually hit it on the head when he said, the first thing I would do is I would go to where people are doing what I want to do, and I would surround myself with those people. And
well, him and I started together, and that's exactly what we did. And
very true. I mean, I've done that. I mean, when I first started, I started going to, I was at every real estate. If there was a real estate meetup, I was there.
Right.
And I'd go to, sometimes, I'd be out there, nowadays you can go out there 5 nights a week. And so I was out there in it. So I can attest to that. I want to throw this opportunity out there to everybody watching, whether you're watching live or you're watching on the replay. If you're struggling with anything or anything that we're talking about here has hit home with you, I'd like to talk to you and find out what you're working on, what you're doing, what's working and not working, and spend a few minutes with you and give you some pointers in the right direction. And so in order for me to know to reach out to you, what I want you to do is leave a comment below and say breakthrough. And then, we'll schedule an appointment, and maybe how you can even put my calendar link in the comments as well. Just 15 minutes or so, maybe 30 at the most. And let's talk about what you're doing, what you're working on. And we can give you some pointers, in the right direction.
You see this shirt here? Rehab to Riches. This is when we were running the bus tour for the Rich Club 10 years ago. We need to do another bus tour. Our last bus tour was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, we've actually, we talked about it. We're looking to put one together for April or May. And then we also talked about something else before we got on here to where we might possibly do like a rehab class from start to finish.
I think we need to do a bus tour in March.
You want to do one? I don't
think we have enough stuff to do, James. I think we need to throw that on your plate.
You realize this is being recorded, right? And we have people watching.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I enjoy bus tours.
So who wants a bus tour? Ray wants to do one. Who wants to comment bus tour? If you're ready. If you want us to do one in March, comment bus tour. We'll put it together.
I think we ought to make it 2 days. 1 day on the streets, And then one day going through the comps and figuring out what the values are, breaking down what the rehab would be, and really make it so that if you really want to be a flipper or you're already doing flips, we can actually look at the real numbers and come up with the best numbers and just go A to Z on taking a house from basically ready to fix to fixing it to selling it, going through that whole process. We can do that in 2 days.
Well, another thing, Ray, we got to do one in San Antonio.
Yeah.
We do have to do one in San Antonio, because our last one was here. So we definitely need to think about that. So we're getting interest on it. So get ready, Ray. We're getting interest. There's people are wanting us to do it.
I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. And I think the most amazing thing is a lot of people think that they've done 4 or 5 rehabs and they think they got this thing mastered. And the thing is, when you've done none, everything you learn is wonderful. But once you've done 4 or 5, and then you're around people who've done, because it'd probably be me and Pat, between us, we've probably done a couple thousand rehabs, you're going to see things and hear things that most people don't know, or they're going to know a lot of the big block stuff, but they're not going to know a lot of the minutia and the niche stuff and the things that make a big difference.
We get lots of feedback on that last tour that we did, property tour, which, guys, just so you know, we're going to refer to it as bus tour, property tour. It's just sometimes we have a bus, sometimes we don't, but they're all the same thing. But a lot of the feedback that we get is how detailed that we are, on these property tours, because there's some out there that, you're out there at the house, you're there for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and you don't really get anything out of it. But you actually, on our tours, we actually get involved with it. There's interaction. And so I just wanted to share that feedback with you because obviously you enjoy it. So therefore you deliver it better.
Well, so there's a couple things to think about on a bus tour. One is you really have to wear kind of 2 hats. One is you got to wear the investor hat, which you got to look at it strictly from numbers and the value and the way the product needs to go into the marketplace and what should be done in the marketplace. So that's kind of the investor cap, but it's also kind of a designer cap. But then there's also the rehab part where you have to get the rehab done on time, on budget, and we fail miserably at that still today because it's not something that you can take for granted. It's something you have to fight for, right? And so you have to have a kind of a rehabber hat and you have to have that investor hat. And we've never stopped rehabbing houses for 39 years. We've been rehabbing them. And all through the 90s, we did major rehabs. And Pat's on our team. Pat teaches on our coaching calls. He does the rehab part of our coaching calls. And that is Pat's, he has the rehab hat on, basically. And then I have the rehab/investor hat because we've always only rehabbed for ourselves. Whereas Pat has been a project manager, rehab for lots of other people. He's done a lot of commercial rehab. So he's got a pretty interesting experience as a rehabber. So between the two of us, I think we do a pretty good job. And then we have that investor hat. A lot of guys, they've never rehabbed a house. There's one guy out there, he was a wholesaler forever until all of a sudden it became popular.
We lost you, Ray. But yeah, those bus tours are lots of fun.
He's a buy and hold expert, but he's never bought and hold for anything. So he doesn't, when he says he's a buy and hold expert, does he really know how to rebuild that rehab property to buy and hold that property for long term? What's his real experience? And as far as I know, he's never had a screwdriver in his hand, but he's coming in as an expert. And it's like, this is our playground. This is what we've been doing for our whole lives. And we're still out there doing it every day. In fact, I'm at one of the Airbnbs that we have, and the guys were over here working, and we're adding. I didn't tell you this, but we added a pergola today, and so now what we're going to do is put a hot tub in it, and this will be our first Airbnb to do that. So I was here helping them make sure it was level, and of course, if they're listening, they know I didn't help them a lot, but I definitely gave a bunch of orders and stuff like that. But we got the pergola installed. They're going to add the deck to it, and we'll have a hot tub in it in probably a week or two. And so we're out there every day working and rehabbing our stuff.
You
so
giving orders?
We have a lot to offer.
You giving orders? I can't imagine that.
I know. I'd definitely rather be on in a rehab environment than working in an office. God, I hate working in the office. I'll take any excuse I can to get out of the office.
Well, I'll be sure and keep that in mind.
Yes. In fact, you know what my daughter and my wife say to me when I go in the office, I'm spending there too long? They'll say, don't you have someplace to go?
All right, guys. Well, that's just about it. Again, just to recap a couple of things. We have our next main meeting on March 12th. Well, actually, hold on. Let me back up. Tomorrow night, if you're in San Antonio, Ray is actually going to be doing the same thing that we did tonight. He's going to be on the panel in San Antonio. So if you're there, check him out. And then March, we have Tom Berry coming to our Houston RIA. And then we're going to put together a bus tour. So if you're interested in that, let us know. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you guys at our next event. But before we go, Ray, any closing statements?
No, I just got to tell my wife where I'm at. That was her calling.
All right, guys. Well,
Dan, I'm not at the bar. I'm still working.
Yeah, and we have it on. You have an alibi, so
yeah,
there you go.
That's true. And hopefully, there's a timestamp on this.
There is. So, it's on YouTube and Facebook and everything. You should tell her to go log on to YouTube, and she'll see it live. All right. So that's it. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Ray. Wonderful content tonight. We got lots of feedback on our video. I was getting texts throughout the show. Thank you, Hal. Thank you to all of our wonderful, family and members of our RIA that, help keep us going. And reach out if we can help you guys with anything. Get connected with people that are doing what you want to do. And that's what we're here for. Good night, guys.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Hal. Y'all guys did great. And thanks for all the softball questions, James.
Softball questions. Wow.